floor 1.5. Covered in gravy.
I'm in the right one, right?
This is SLA, right?
Okay, good. Now I'm like, okay, now I see Mike and Trevor. I'm like, okay, good. I'm in the right place.
You guys are all co-hosts and everything, so
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
Troy.
you, Troy.
I feel like I almost cursed myself a little bit with my talk during our prep call about my last year call with a sick person. I should be good, but I might have to run mid-session. I know that's probably a little TMI, but
Oh no, I'm sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, that's it's no fun.
yeah, I was like, I don't know if if I ate something last night that was not great, but
Aaron, you were eating sushi.
I was.
Oh no.
Yeah.
My son was fine, is fine. He's like, yeah, I'm all right. But at the same time, he only had the Philadelphia rolls. He didn't have any of the other ones. So I'm like, awesome.
That's not even really,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh. But yeah, we'll power
Yes.
through. That's what I do.
Yes, Robert, that gas station had 5 stars, so that
Yeah.
sushi had to be okay, right?
Right? It's all good.
All right, who's the stand-up comic in the group? Go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us a joke.
I'm only funny one day a month, and today is not my funny day. Sorry.
Tim Van Wert, I'm gonna call on you. Tell us a story. Tell us a joke, Tim Van Wert.
Oh geez, you're putting me on the spot while I'm trying to navigate the roads of New Jersey here, you know.
I was about to propose we take a bet and see if Tim is in the car or not.
I mean, odds
He's
are,
in the car.
odds always are Tim's in the car.
Well, when it gets to this late in the afternoon, the odds are better. I was in my office for maybe 50% of the day today, other than that, going to service classrooms and stuff, because, as we all know, it never ends. So,
Yep. Well, be safe out there, Tim.
I will be. It's the other guys I got to watch out for. And the good news is I will be home. I will be home tomorrow, so I will not be on the road taking anything. I got no appointments, no nothing. Just HETMA tomorrow. So
That's
Nice.
a miracle.
it's a HETMA miracle.
Yeah, who needs Festivus?
The rest of us.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we always need the airing of grievances, though. I think that is one piece that we all can get behind.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I have some issues with you people.
What do you mean, you people?
Well, that would make life interesting. Christopher Dector.
I think we're probably good to go.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks for joining us on this last breakout time of day 2 of HETMA. Super exciting to have you all here with us. So we're here to talk about SLAs and SLEs and what's the difference and how are they used and all that type of stuff. So I'm Mike Peterson. For those of you who don't know, I work at Iowa State University, and I'll be the moderator and maybe sometimes chime in panelist on this particular session. And but let's go ahead and introduce our 2 formal panelists. Trevor, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Trevor Musoff. I manage both the AV design and support teams at Northwestern University in both Evanston and Chicago.
All right. And Aaron, everyone knows you, but introduce yourself anyway. So.
Right. For those that may not know me, I'm Erin Marmoran. I'm the IT manager for classroom technology at Johns Hopkins University on the Homewood campus. My team designs, installs, maintains, supports the general pool classrooms on our campus, as well as does event support. And I'm the vice chair of this organization called HETMA. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah. You'll have to tell us more about HETMA later on if we have enough time after the thing here. So no, that's exciting. So all right. So let's dive in. Would either of you be willing to define what an SLA or an SLE is first before we get started?
I can take a stab at it. So in terms
Take
of
a stab at it.
well, we have SLAs at Northwestern, so service level agreements where we partner with peer departments to provide AV services through some defined definition of what that is. Unfortunately, I'm in charge of reaching out to all the clients and the paperwork of handling all these documents and agreements and invoicing. So I have probably 200 rooms under service level agreement. It's a yearly process that I work with all the partners in the different schools and departments, and we have kind of some room definitions of whether it's a classroom with a computer, a laptop presentation space, an advanced video conference room. So we have some different types of room types, and then our department offers a couple different tiered levels of service. And then with those different tiers, we have different costs associated, and then you get different levels of support depending on how much you would like to pay. That's kind of the start of the discussion and what we have SLAs here, and I can go into more of that. But Aaron, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you covered SLAs very well. For my school, we have decided to go more the SLE track, the service level expectation. That basically it's sort of in a blanket agreement to the general community that uses our services to say, this is what you should expect from us. So, and then we'll go into more detail.
Yep.
As we go.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In my experience, SLAs sometimes have some teeth behind them too, especially if you're working with an outside, service partner, where if they don't meet their SLA, there may be fines or penalties, where an SLE would never have any teeth behind it. It's more informal, like best effort. This is what we're going to attempt to do, at least for me experientially. So yeah, I think that's a good definition of what they are. So, all right. So Aaron, you kind of said you were going to get into it. So let's go ahead and get into it. What does that look like for you at Johns Hopkins, and what do you have established as some of your SLEs, and what's included or not included? So.
Yeah. So it started about in I think like August of last year, where our dean's office, my team sits we are under a IT umbrella, thus being an IT manager, but being more audiovisual. And so our dean's office was like, came to the overarching IT group and was like, we need to know what to expect from you guys. We pretty much give like a high standard of service, but it was kind of like, we wanted to make sure that everybody in the department was kind of running under the same standard. So we ended up formalizing it in October. And so it basically includes a bit of a communication plan, like email for this, use, if it's immediate, absolutely use the phone. Even though there's so many people nowadays, they're like, what is that? That is what I text on. I do not make phone calls from it. But if it's an immediate thing and you expect an immediate result, you got to pick up that phone. And we pretty much laid out that using Slack and Teams, due to the potential consistency in notifications, we recommended they not be used if this is a issue that they want resolved in a timely manner. We also set up response time expectations. If someone's current status is available, you should get a response in 15 to 30 minutes. But that does not include my department, in which the expectation is that for a phone, somebody's always answering it. If it's during our peak times and you have to leave a voicemail, that voicemail is returned right away. So my team sort of has sort of a higher level expectation on top of these. But it also kind of addressed what sort of response you should expect if you drop by somebody's office. Since we are very much a on-campus, on-campus group, especially the AV team. We are, the classes are on the campus. We do some remote management, but for the most part, we have an in-person presence. For the IT professionals who work hybrid schedule, they tend to have their faculty who like to drop by their offices. And so we kind of wanted to make sure that they understood that just because you're walking up and saying, and you get a person, that doesn't automatically jump you to the top of the queue. Like there's a hierarchy of needs essentially, and they'll try to help as they can, but you might have to wait your turn. And also it laid out that if someone responds to a call or puts, basically touches a ticket, you have now claimed ownership over that, and that you're responsible for the communication line after the fact, even if it's potentially not your area of expertise and you have to hand it off to somebody to finish, making sure that the room is fully functioning after the fact. You are the one who returns the call or the email to the original reporter to let them know that it's fixed. And then also we included that prioritization, that that sometimes there are some things that will need, if the urgency, there are some things that may have to jump the queue. And then we I think what I really like the most about this document that we put together was that we also included expectations of the clients, so that it's not one-sided. And because a lot of times these things are, it's always what we're going to do, what to expect from us. But I really appreciate that it also included kind of things that they should, we should expect of them. And they're things that are pretty obvious, but in high tension times, we know how faculty can be sometimes. So it's basically just stating respect for our time, respect for our knowledge and expertise, and respect for our priorities. But it's really nice to have that backing at least a little bit, so that when those situations come up where they're just like, I'm like, yes, I understand that, but please be respectful of me, essentially, as a human. But yeah, that's our SLE in a nutshell.
Nope. That is great stuff. There's lots of stuff to unpack there that we'll get to. But Trevor, can you just give us kind of a highlight of, what your SLAs look like, what's included, who the people involved are?
Sure. The SLAs themselves we have, like I said, a tiered system. So we have a limited support, which is kind of a 3-day response time, a level 2, which is kind of a 1-hour response time. And then we have a level 1, which is a 15 minutes response time. So we outline what building the room is, what's the name of the room, what the type of the room is, and then what level of agreement it has. And then based on that, we can provide the different support level and response and resolution times. In these documents, we outline the hours of operation, who to call, what to do if we need repair or maintenance of the equipment, that the department's responsible for those fees. We talk about that this service does not include events. So if anything event related would be an additional charge. on top for someone to either stay through the event or the setup or the preparation. So it's really just a break fix type SLA. We do provide quality assurance checks. So depending on the support level, it'd be once a quarter, we say, for the limited. So once every 90 days, the level 2 or once every 15 days. So every 3 weeks. And then the support level is kind of once a week, is what we shoot for. We outline if there's any computers supported or any other peripherals that typically we wouldn't touch in the document. And then kind of some of their responsibilities, like Aaron was saying, we need access to the room schedule. We need keys. We need all these things that typically wouldn't be our responsibility. And we need help with you to provide this to us if you want us to be partners in this basically contract. So those are some of the things in there. We're typically working with some of the other IT schools and directors, or sometimes if it could be directly with a faculty member or just a partner who owns a room and wants AV space. My team also does the design side and the installation. So sometimes when those projects are happening, we partner to know, hey, this project's coming online, do you want support? So we kind of have insight to what might be coming online or what might we be supporting in the coming years. So we continue to keep adding spaces year after year.
Yeah. So where do you these documents, where are they held? Like how do people find them? How well are they communicated?
So not well. There internally we have records of what rooms are supported, and we have a database online to keep track of that. It's me basically updating these documents yearly, talking to the end users. Hey, you had support for this room. Do you still want it? Have any additional rooms come on? So it's a constant communication yearly that we have with these groups to make sure they stay on board and basically that they pay their bill. And then also just the yearly contact helps work out any details. Oh, you did this good, we didn't do this good, what do we need to work on together to make this partnership? So we see it more as a partnership. Although we're charging for something, they're also getting a level of service that I don't think they can get outside the university, where someone who says, no, I don't want a contract, I typically would go to a vendor and say, hey, give me a 1-year support contract for what you're going to charge to have your technician come out and help them. And once they see that bill, they're like, all right, we'll sign up with you. So
yeah, I've already heard that theme earlier today, about providing that outside quote tends to make things go a lot smoother afterwards. So yeah, for sure. So how about you, Aaron? Have you communicated your SLE to your user base?
Yeah. So I was posted onto our the IT departmental website, and then the dean's office sent out pretty much an email that was expressing that this is in place, highlighted parts, and then set forward the expectation that everyone would abide.
Yep.
So far it seems like it's gone over pretty well, and we hadn't really heard any kind of rumblings or kickback from it, so
yeah,
it was pretty good, luckily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, at Iowa State, we have a very at this point relatively informal set of SLEs. Actually, they're called SLOs actually on our website. I'm going to put a link in here for one of the sites, and you can go in and kind of, for those who are interested, you can go take a peek at this. But and if you expand down the service level objective, it kind of shows some of the expectations there. But yeah, it's one of the benefits, obviously, of these for us is, like you were saying, Aaron, if you ever get into a dispute, right? If there's ever a challenge to something, you have a document that you go back and point at and say, well, this was the this is kind of the agreement that that we worked out, and so this is what's, you know, we've said was going to happen or not happen, and so yeah, it kind of gives you that extra, you know, support, like you say, in some respects, but behind the scenes. You know, as we're talking about expectation, another document that we put together that kind of helps with that on our integration side is terms and conditions document. So there's it's a page, it's like a 1-page terms and conditions that gets tacked on to all our estimates that we send out. You know, and that's super helpful too, right? Because it talks about, you know, how we operate, how our budgeting works, how we're completely time and materials build out. There's no warranty or guarantees with the work that we do because we're all time and materials. And it's just, it really kind of helps, you know, head off, you know, potential issues or challenges that you might face. It's all about setting those customer expectations up front. So yeah. So if somebody had not yet set up an SLA or an SLE, what tips might you have for them if they were going to start to proceed down that path?
I would, coming from a department that used to have SLAs, which we hit a point where it just was not, it wasn't feasible for us any longer to uphold all of the, you know, any of the agreements. It basically, we hit a point where it was like, it took a person, it was, you know, it took way more of their time trying to make sure that all of the agreements were fulfilled, and then doing that work on top of it. So any of the preventative maintenance that needed to be done, the room checks, any of that stuff. So my recommendation would be to make sure that you've got adequate staffing and documentation to, you know, be able to pull it off adequately. That's why we switched to a per you know, just in time service, essentially, so that if someone did want us to come out, we will, sort of thing, and then charge per visit. But yeah, I would imagine that, yeah, that's my my 2 cents.
Yep. How about you, Trevor?
I was just going to say, start slow and just make sure you have management on cue, because it can kind of grow pretty organically and quickly when departments start to find out that you might offer this service and the staffing you need to support it. You can maybe support 5 or 10 rooms with your existing staffing, but as that starts to grow, you're going to have resources internally with staffing or students or however you're going to do it to maintain those agreements and those coverages that you need. The one other thing that I was thinking that we have done in the past is we've partnered with schools for a percentage of an FTE where we embed someone from our IT staff as an AV subject matter expert or technician into School of Law or into school business, and they're covering 60 or 75% or whatever hourly percentage of time that we think they'll be spending with that department. And then they would backfill the remaining percent with things for our group or tasks for our team. So if there's a way to partner with a group and have one staff dedicated to just that group, that might be another way to get started.
Yeah. One thing, what should I have for you, Trevor, is, you know, would you explain what you guys are doing for an SLA? The term that comes to mind for me is more of a service contract. Could you kind of unpack? I know it's a semantics thing, and so, and I'm that guy, right? But how do you, you know, how would you, I guess, think about that terminology as far as, you know, you're selling or providing a service contract to someone versus an SLA? So
I guess in the end that it is more like a contract, but since we're both working for the same institution and have the same goal in mind, I don't feel like they'd hold us to it as much as an external vendor.
Right.
So that when we do have these meetings and it's like, oh, you didn't check the room when you're supposed to, oh, I was down a guy, or like they're not going to fire me as their service provider.
Sure. Yeah.
So I see it more as a partnership, even though we call it an agreement, but it's not really a contract because I mean, they could leave at any time, we could leave at any time if it's not working. Nothing holding us to that.
Okay. Yep. That sounds great. So Aaron, Tim has a question here. Have you had to address any requesters not following their expectations? How do you handle that, especially with the entitled faculty? So
yeah, so we certainly, you know, we've very much had our fair share of entitled faculty. And it's basically, comes down to we've had some situations of sort of disrespect of staff members, and it basically then starts off with me reaching out and, you know, trying to not soothe the situation, but essentially being like, okay, I understand that things happen and your class is very important to you, sort of trying to hear their side of it first before I go all mother bear on them and be like, why are you doing that to my guys? Like, it's sort of trying to make them feel heard, and then go back and say, okay, I understand your frustrations. Please, next time, consider not doing that. And then if we need to, then we start escalating higher into the dean's office, so that then it comes from more senior leadership that, you know, there's a problem.
yeah.
But luckily,
Can I ask?
it doesn't come to that typically, although it has in the past pre SLE. But yeah,
Can I
Tim,
ask? I
sorry.
was gonna say, can I ask a follow up?
Yeah.
So putting in that SLE on the requester, have you noticed that those sort of situations dropped as well?
Yes, we
Okay.
you know, since we've instituted it, we haven't really had to step in and say anything. So I'm hoping that, you know, it's making those small adjustments that has helped change behaviors a little.
Yeah. So we're getting lots of stories of how people have been mistreated throughout the years. So those are always fun and sad to hear at the same time. I know, like BC, you even mentioned that you had a faculty undergoing disciplinary action. We got close to that a year or two back with a faculty person here too. I mean, certainly some serious conversations with the department chair of that department, and I know that there was some stern conversations held with the faculty person, but I don't think it ever went to more of a formalized disciplinary action. But yep, sometimes they can act in an unbecoming way. So a wireless keyboard at you, holy cow. All right. So you have these SLAs or SLEs set up. Are there any like processes or procedures then that you kind of put behind the scenes that help you manage or support or make sure that you're trying to meet the timeline expectations or things like that? What kinds of things do you implement then behind the scenes to make sure that you're supporting as you said you were?
One of the
Oh, go ahead, Trey.
Sorry, I would say one of the things we did, we developed an in-house like room check solution. So we would have in there the service level agreement. This room needs to be checked every 15 days. When the 15 days would come up, would throw a flag. The students log into the system and go, "Oh, I need to check this room, and this room." And then the actual clients themselves would have access into that portal, so they could go and say, "Oh, on this week there's a green check box," and they could see exactly when their rooms were serviced, when they were visited, things like that, so that it was both the end user could see what we were doing, and we had a system of deploying our students to do these room checks in a way that met the service level agreement. And then also on that same front, we'll go into the scheduling system and set a time quarterly on, we need an hour in this room to do a room check on these days and these days and these days, and kind of associate the student work or staff work to make sure that the room is visited and checked on those certain days.
Yeah, and lucky from our side of things, it's basically just, you know, checking in with, you know, the staff and making sure that, you know, everyone's doing what they're doing. And if we're not hearing that, you know, anything, because if people aren't, you know, living up to the expectations, we usually hear about it. So because they were like, I called and I haven't heard from anybody and this and that, and nobody's responding to me. But so luckily from an expectation point of view, it's a little easier, but at the same time, it's harder because there really isn't those like metrics as much to, it's kind of the no news is good news, and cross your fingers that somebody's not in the background stewing about something.
We also created a few forms for people to fill out. So we have a form if there is an event request or kind of Zoom help or setup request, so we know about it in advance if it's a higher profile event. We've set some up for classroom recording so people can fill out a form and we can schedule in advance. And then same thing with orientation. So anyone that wants to get familiar with the technology in the room can fill out a orientation form request, and then we schedule that and meet the faculty or the end users in the room. So we have some things in place to kind of keep track of items.
Yeah.
I'm smiling because I love hearing that, because we have forms and we had gone through a web redesign that we took our website, that everything was hand coded by myself. And so in order to bring our website, into modern times, not that it wasn't, because I'm good at web coding, but just to make it look as flashy and make it easy for other people to update, so it wasn't always on me. But when we brought it to the team that was going to translate everything into WordPress, they were like, "Do you need all of these forms?" Yes, I need all of them. And so the manager that had replaced me, he was like, "Oh no, I think we can do without a couple of these forms." So we pared it down to one basic form, and basically a month later we were like, "Nope, all the forms, putting them all back."
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, we lost Erin for a second there. Hopefully, she's doing okay. Yeah, running out of questions all of a sudden. Any questions from the audience while I regroup myself here?
Had a coughing jag.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I actually have a question for the crowd. If you were going to build an SLE or an SLA, what are things that you would want to put into it? Because I'm like, now that I've taken a step back and kind of looked at it again under different eyes, I'm like, oh, There are other things we probably could have put in here.
Yeah, feel free and unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
Oh, and for the time frame for the forms, Teddy was asking. For us, it is it's an expected 10 business days. So essentially 2 weeks in advance. Lord knows that never happens. So we do actually, on the form, it says that if the request is made within, I believe it's, I think it's 48 hours of the event, they have to pay a fee. It's like a last minute fee essentially, just to try to curb people from making those last minute requests. And then they're always the ones who complain because they're like, it didn't go the way we wanted it to. I'm like, well, had you let us have more time to plan and staff properly, it wouldn't have been a problem.
So here's a question from Britt. I think it's a great question. What ways do you gather feedback from your services? So, how do you gather data that that's working, it's not working, people are happy, not happy with what you're up to?
So currently, we do a semesterly survey essentially. But we have been toying around with the idea of putting something on, at least the rooms that have touch panels have a little quick, like when you exit, little exit survey, just to be like 1 to 5, how happy are you? Are you happier? Like, just to potentially try to get even more data, because we do find that we'll sit there and we'll think a room is working just fine, and then weeks later we get a complaint and they're like, this room has never worked, and we're like, as far as we know, it works and we've tested it and it works, so let's work with you to see how you're using it for it to not work. But yeah, so we'd like to try to find a way to get better feedback quicker, as opposed to having to wait until we do a survey.
Yeah. How about you, Trevor? How have you gathered feedback?
I don't think
if
I
at
have
all?
any data or feedback on SLAs themselves. It's kind of that conversation we have yearly of what's going to work, what's not going to work, what needs to change. My favorite thing is where I just send them the invoice and the thing with the new dates and they just send it right back. And I don't have to question or edit or do anything. I feel like they're getting a good service. But I don't really have any data on terms of the SLAs themselves.
Yeah.
We do the same thing, quarterly survey on how the technology works to the faculty, but that's not really related to SLAs.
Sure. Yeah. So I know you guys are both still semi-new to this, but what are some lessons learned that you've found along the way from the very first time you started this to like, ooh, this wasn't working so good, so we adjusted this or that. Anything along the way that you've kind of learned along the way?
I mean, at least not with the SLE yet.
Okay.
But I mean, because we ended up here because we learned that the SLAs were not for us. But yeah, so far, I think at least I think the only thing that I might have done differently or want to adjust more is greater visibility of it.
Yep.
From my perspective, I walked into kind of this template already. I feel like the rates don't align with the service we provide.
Yeah.
But diving into the to the bookkeeper's numbers on what we need to hit every year for revenue and for what we're charging, I've kind of left it. I'm always, if we don't support a room, I don't like to let people hang out to dry. So I kind of say, let's go hit it. And then maybe I can follow up after them about an SLA. So it's kind of like give you some free service up front, partner with them, show them that you can provide this service. And then it helps build that relationship for us to provide that service in a paid model later on. Is kind of how I feel a good way to get into it.
Yeah.
Helps.
So that brings something to mind that we discussed in the pre-call that I'd like to discuss here as a group. So, one of the things, Trevor, that you'd mentioned in the pre-call is that sometimes you struggle, because some of your SLAs are for, you get the gold standard agreement versus somebody who just gets the normal agreement, and in theory you're supposed to respond more quickly to the gold standard agreement than the cheaper agreements, but sometimes you find yourself responding just as quickly to those, and so you think somebody's getting cheated. Unpack that for me and tell me how that's working out for you. So,
well, that's part of the reason why I was saying the restructuring, where I feel like the limited 3-day service, the people are on average paying about $550 a year to support a room for the whole year for 3 days service. And when someone calls our helpline, we're sending somebody there typically in 15-20 minutes, like it's a level 1 or level 2 service. So I feel like we're charging too low on like the limited, but we're charging too much for the level 1, where I feel if we could meet everyone in the middle, we'd probably bring in the same amount of money and everyone kind of get a fair level of service. But it is a challenge. The other challenge is sending staff versus a student and the rates, and it gets tricky on the economic side of it. But that's why we partner with the HR teams and the accounting people to kind of help with those numbers.
Yep. Do you see yourself changing that instead of you say you have 3 levels right now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Do you see yourself changing that down to 2 or change that up at all? So
we have the level 1 because we actually included event support into that. So it's a really high touch, high profile. So we feel like some clients actually want that. And when they call or fill out that form, we're there immediately. And then we kind of got people just want support, but better than 3 days. So I don't think the 3 tiers are going to change.
Yep.
But maybe I have thought about like just getting rid of limited. You're either in or you're out in terms of we're answering the phone and we're there, or and I think that might be a way to move forward in the future.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I had a quick question for the people on here. Obviously, as an integrator, we do both higher ed and corporate clients, and I know one of our SLEs for corporate clients states that people of a certain level, no matter what room they're in, get a certain service level time of response. And I was curious if you guys had anything like that based on individuals or happen to be in rooms. I know, Trevor, you just mentioned about having certain rooms as being priority over others. I was just wondering if there was anything like individual person based.
Personnel based, where I only send certain people to certain rooms, you mean?
No, like if a certain person has a meeting in a certain room, that particular room gets elevated to the higher status and having a quicker response rate.
Yeah. Are there VIPs? Do
Right.
certain individuals get the VIP treatment?
Not from any of our SLA clients. We have a peer IT group that kind of services the president, provost, that type of clientele. And if we get a call from them, we're helping them immediately. But in terms of our SLAs, there's not one faculty member or one school that gets preferential treatment over another. If they wanted that, they would have to up their tier to the higher level to get that level of service.
Yeah, I would say for us, it isn't strictly written, but there is somewhat of an expectation that the higher you are on the org chart, the higher the priority. So our
Yeah,
dean's office, if they come above, some other things, is like especially just regular staff. But usually a classroom or like a general pool classroom will trump most other things. And then a departmental classroom will kind of come behind there.
Yep. And that's, again, nothing formalized here, but that's very similar to what we have, right? Any actively engaged learning space, again, for us, general pool classrooms come first because we're essentially funded for that. But again, departmental spaces would be quick after that. Then, yeah, of course, there's always those, if the president office calls, it doesn't matter what agreements you have in place with the president's office. You go as quickly as possible and you take care of things. So yeah, there are always those things here in higher ed. So yeah. All right. Any other questions? We're about 15 minutes, a little less than 15 minutes left. That was a great question, Aaron. Any other questions from the group?
I think there was another one from Britt in the chat.
Okay, let me go look. Oh, is your SLA SLE strictly your purview, AVIT, or does it also encompass other areas of potential IT like instructional design and ed tech? I don't know. It's a good question. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, I know for us, ours just covers the our and it's not even, it's just our schools IT umbrella. So the expectations of other schools IT groups or AV groups might be different, and they fall under whatever their structure might be. And it does become then a little gray, because then it's like, oh, who's keeping an eye on who? And because my department sits in a strange place, because yes, we are under the IT department for one of the colleges or one of the schools on the campus. There are multiple schools that use the classroom. So even though we're under one, we still have to keep in mind that our users fall under different groups. But yeah, so for us, it's pretty much us.
Yeah. Yep.
I was gonna say ours is strictly AV technology in the classroom, that we don't dive into any of the other ed tech stuff. The one thing I didn't add earlier is, if one of the added benefits, if you do use us for a service level agreement, we use our back stock and our attic stock to support you if something fails. So instead of being down, if something breaks, we'll grab something from our spare parts, put it in, and then you'd be responsible for repair and shipping and all that stuff, but it'll at least keep your rooms up and running if you partner with us and have that agreement, where the other schools or people that don't have that relationship are just down until they can get someone to come fix it.
Yeah, that's actually a huge benefit, to have that shelf stock available to your more premier SLA holders. Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, BC, it's a great question. Have you ever thought of moving to a model where all schools pay a common good fee and you don't have to worry about departmental SLA, SLE? So I'll start here first. We have been having this conversation pretty regularly over the last year, about how could we make that work? What could that look like? Where basically each college gets, charged a per faculty, staff, head count amount, and you don't think about it, right? Whoever calls, you just go. I there's some serious conversation about it, but I think the challenge is that for us, the departments have their own IT staff sometimes. We're not like, all IT is not centralized yet. And so I think they like having that control of their own people. And so it makes it harder to kind of establish that type of SLA, because then who's responsible for what? And yeah. I don't know, Aaron, Trevor, have you guys ever had those types of conversations about just kind of having a common good fee?
I would love it to happen. I don't think it'll ever happen. It's too siloed where we're at. Like you were saying, we have the school of management that has more staff than our 300 rooms for their 30 rooms because they provide white glove service. And we have individual schools that have both their own AV and IT staff. Sure, we collaborate and talk to each other and know each other on campus, but their goal is to support their faculty and their school. And until some initiative came from provost or president to integrate that into one service, unfortunately, I don't think it'll happen. I think it'd be great if it did. I think it'd be a better service the university could provide as a whole. But I don't personally see that happening where we're at anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a conversation I think that happens often. But now we actually even have one of the schools that has out of their instructional design group, they have now a growing AV team. So now areas have gotten where they were kind of gray are now super gray, because then it's like, who do they call? Because they're, a lot of times they're faculty, they're like, I'm in a classroom, I'm going to call the number I know, even though then we're like, oh, that's technically not our classroom. But at the same time, I don't want to be like, oh no, you got to call them. So we'll come out and we'll try, and then follow back up with the other team. But yeah, or even with event support, we, instead of like charging per event for different departments, one of the ideas had been to just create a fund and then we just do events. But then it ultimately comes back to, we kind of have to, in the charging structure keeps it somewhat manageable so that everybody is not like, oh, we'll all have events now and do all of these things that there's not enough time and people to take care of it. But yeah, I mean, there are some ways that, that sort of model would work and be nice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because it'd be less, less tracking of everything, and less being like, oh, we'll just deploy as needed, instead of having to be like, oh, well, that's not our space, but then we have to go back and charge them after the fact.
Yeah, I know.
That's not fun.
The gray areas are sometimes, challenging. We have, general university or general whole classrooms in a couple of colleges, like our College of Business, where the business IT lead, he doesn't want us to respond to classroom issues. He wants them to call him, and he wants to be the person to take care of it all. Even though technically it's, we're on the hook to make those classrooms work. I guess for us, okay, that's great. If that's what you want, we're happy to work with you on that. But again, then it just, becomes that gray area to some extent also. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because then it confuses faculty too,
Right.
Because they're like, especially if they teach in multiple buildings, which are controlled by multiple, then and I think, the calling the one, structure kind of works, but it's like, But if they're then having to support rooms that aren't really theirs, then it gets a little funky.
Yeah. Well, and again, one of the challenges, a broader challenge that we face too, is faculty don't know or care which classrooms are owned by a department and which classrooms are general pool classrooms. To them, it's a classroom. And so they just want someone to come fix it, and they don't really care who owns it. And so sometimes we get faculty who are frustrated too that, you know, the level of expectation they have in one space isn't getting met in another, right? And they're like, it's really inconsistent, you know. And sometimes that comes back on us as the general classroom team, and we're like, whoa, you know, those weren't our spaces, but they don't want to hear that. They don't care. So
Absolutely.
So all right. Well, any final thoughts from either of you, Trevor, Aaron? Aaron, we'll start with you. Anything you want to close with?
Yeah, I mean, it's either if you are considering doing either of these, SLE, SLA, it basically just keep in mind that, it's it can be an evolving process. Like, it doesn't, the first iteration straight out the gate does not, it's not written in stone, but on the flip side of that, you do have to be pretty careful about putting something out prematurely, so that you're not backtracking and then everyone's like, oh, what do you mean? Like,
Yep.
you were just saying one thing, now you mean another. So it's like, cautious, but make it a living document.
Yeah, absolutely. Trevor, any
I would
final
just
thoughts?
say, if you don't have them in place, just start slow. Try and find one client. Try and get your documents in order, get that partnership working, and use them to help spread the word if you want to make the service grow.
All right. So if you guys wouldn't mind if all y'all wouldn't mind putting your contact information in the chat, and so that people would know how to get a hold of you if they chose to, that would be great. And I want to thank everyone for coming and joining our session today. And up next here, we have happy hour. So looking forward to that.
Gotta try to pester Jay into letting us know his secret for InfoComm. So more people know. So more people know, and then we can hold them to it.
Oh, that's
all right.
true.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Thanks for this session, guys. It was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Great session, guys.
Thank you.